Doctors of Reddit, what is your how the hell are you even alive right now story? One time I had a patient who was walking in the street, got hit by a car, thrown into oncoming traffic, bounced off another car, and then got pinned under a third. Or so the EMS report said. He had a dislocated shoulder and a non-displaced femur fracture. He was on cocaine, which probably explained how he was able to scream at the trauma team to leave him alone. Edit. This happened a few months ago. Not Joe Black. When I was in trauma surgery in Upstate by, got a notification about a man who was shot 3 times in the head. He comes in, literally one eye hanging out of the socket, blood everywhere, and he slumped forward. Apparently he was shot in the temple, exited out his right eye socket, in the nose exited from the roof of the mouth, and in the cheek one with exit from the side of the head. At this point I'm thinking they just brought him in, so we can pronounce him in the ear, because he looked dead. I go to examine him, and tilt his head back, and he says you be gentle. I jump back, and scream like a little boy, as did everyone in the room. Literally the bullets missed his brain in every single shot. We have a homeless patient right now with active endocarditis, end-stage renal disease on dialysis, HIV, and a carcinoid tumor. Totally non-compliant with antibiotics, even though he has a PICC line and shows up for dialysis once a week maximum. Never got chemo or surgery for the cancer. Constantly shows up to the ED looking for pain meds, or in hypertensive emergency. After treatment he just walks out again. Gomers don't die. My friend's father is an orthopedic surgeon, and he told us a story that once a boyfriend and girlfriend came in because they tried an in-home abortion by running her pelvis over with a car. Abortion worked, but I hope they actually never reproduce. We have a patient we see at our hospital monthly. Young guy, early 20s, absolute turd to take care of. He has diabetes and essentially refuses to take his insulin. He comes in every time with diabetic ketoacidosis, which is essentially your body going into a coma-like state due to your blood pH becoming acidotic and very elevated sugars. The impressive part isn't that he survives this, most people do. It's that this is a recurring event every month, and each time someone manages to find him / get him to the hospital. If he was ever alone when this occurred and no one found him in a timely fashion, he'd be toast. Been seeing him regularly at the hospital for the last 18 months I've been here. Since you didn't specify how long they stayed alive. In med school I had a patient who got shot in the head a couple blocks away from the hospital. He was still able to talk for a few minutes after arrival, but it was clearly not a survivable injury. I stayed with him as his brain started to swell. I remember the moment his eyes became dull and his speech slurred to a stop. I work with a dude that has a family history of heart disease. Not many males in his immediate family branch reach past the age of 60. This man only has one vice: food. I've seen him in action. At one point his caloric intake was over 10,000 calories a day. It's almost obscene of how many burger meals and giant tubs of soda he puts away in a day. I don't know the count, but when he does need to see a doctor, they always marvel of how he is upright and not dead with his blood pressure so high. He's been told more than once that he should be dead. Edit. Even more surprising, he is not obese. He's pudgy and has that dad belly, but not enormous. He's certainly a wonder. Paramedic here. I ran a call on a guy that was ejected out of a late 80s Mustang. The guy said the car rolled 2 times before pitching him out of the driver's side window. He said he landed on his head and the 7-inch scalp avulsion seemed to corroborate his story. The car was completely crushed and sitting on its top. The guy wanted to refuse treatment and transport. GCS 15 and never lost consciousness. I insisted though that he be seen at the ER. He rode the whole way texting people. When I told him that he shouldn't be alive he said yeah I got a hard nugget. There was a guy who OD'd, was found by his roommate unconscious, had to be resuscitated, was barely responsive to painful stimuli, blood pH was 6.6. Now normal blood pH is between 7.35-7.5, and remember pH is a logarithmic scale, typically 6.8 is not considered compatible with life. He ended up waking up and following commands for a bit. Just crazy. My dad had a massive heart attack a few years ago. He proceeded to drive around for several hours disoriented and confused to where the hospital was. He went to a closed fire station and drove around the city for who knows how long. He had a complete 100% blockage in his left anterior descending artery. They call it the Widowmaker. Blessed to still have my old man around to say the least. Not a medical doctor, but I am almost 1/8 of my way through optometry school. Vet here. I had a patient come in recently with a PCV, packed cell volume, basically how many red blood cells you have, of 12%. Super anemic. The normal range is about 35-55% and we tend to transfuse once it hits 20% as the animal should be struggling. Patient was walking around, wagging tail and everything. Just a little pale. CVT here. I had a cat come in with severe renal failure. At least 95% of the kidneys were completely dead and blood was barely circulating through them. The blood toxicity levels were the highest I have ever seen while I've been in practice. It was amazing the cat could even stand on its own. It didn't make it very long, but I still found it amazing. I've been struck by 3 cars, worked in a coal mine until a shaft collapsed with my team in it, worked making fireworks until a stray spark detonated the powder shack I was walking out of, I've fallen off of roofs, and was even a passenger in a jeep that flipped. My only excuse is I'm too ugly to die lol. Bit 7 times by a brown recluse spider when I was 5. Don't even have scars. Doctor said by the 3rd bite I should have been in convulsions. I just remember they itched a lot. I saw a guy who got shot 9 times, 3 of which were in the neck. Nothing important got hit, so we just cleaned out the wounds, packed and covered them, and that was it. Not a doc, but I'm a paramedic. I had a patient shot 6 times in the chest with a 9mm at point blank range. Homie was still yelling at the other dude, now in custody, how he was gonna get out to the hospital and find him. I was pretty dumbfounded at how lucky this bastard was considering most people don't yell after 6 shots in the chest. I was diagnosed with bilateral pneumonia while in boot camp. It started as a cold that got really bad, really quick. Coughing up blood, shortness of breath, etc. When I finally went to medical I had a 103-degree fever and O2 sat of 65ish. Went to the hospital on base where they x-rayed me. I knew something was really bad when every person in the place was huddled around the picture pointing and giving me weird looks. Turns out about 80% of my lungs had filled up with fluid. I was eventually transported off base to an ICU where I spent 5 days getting my lungs drained and recovering. I still have doctors give me weird looks when they look at my medical files. Well, this story has happened somewhere around the 70s to my uncle and even made it to the newspaper. My uncle was driving on a scooter one afternoon on a country road when he was hit heavily by a car from the back. He fell off the scooter, flew through the windshield of the car, and came to an halt on the back seat. The driver of the car stepped on the brake, so that he flew from the back seat again through the windshield, and ended lying on the road. Except from some bruises he was unharmed. When the police came both, my uncle and the driver of the car told the same story, which they didn't believed in the first place. However, my uncle had lost a shoe in the back of the car, so finally also the police got convinced. My grandma cut out the article from the newspaper, and it is still in a frame in her living room. My brother's girlfriend is a medical student. On her 2nd year she had a course on nursing. She had to help examine a woman who came for chest pain. She noticed an awful smell from the woman. The woman had stage 4 breast cancer, treated herself with homeopathy and her boobs were rotting. My dad recently had a heart attack, but he wasn't aware of it until he reached the hospital. He woke up early in the morning one day because he felt chest pain. He then proceeded to walk to a small clinic nearby to get it checked out. The nurse at the center told him to go to the hospital as soon as possible. My dad then proceeds to go get some breakfast before going to the hospital. After eating breakfast he then goes to the hospital, where he proceeds to walk up 4 flights of stairs instead of using the elevator. The doctor immediately admitted him to the ICU upon running some tests and performed an angiogram. The doctor told us 4 of his major arteries were 95% blocked, and it was a miracle he was alive. I thank God every day for keeping my dad alive. This one dude had a stomachache and thought it meant there was a tapeworm in his belly eating him alive, so he drank bleach and ammonia trying to smoke it out. Anesthesiologist here. We had a fine young gentleman who was shot while diving away from a gang-related bullet. A single bullet hit his right subclavian vein, went through his right lung, right diaphragm, liver, many loops of bowel, hit both his left iliac artery and vein, and lodged in his sacrum. He coded, heart stopped, no blood pressure, in the ED, got an ED thoracotomy, internal cardiac massage, and got his heart restarted. 200+ units of blood product and 10 hours of emergent surgery later, he made it to the ICU. Before that night, I had never seen someone survive after an ED thoracotomy, and had never given someone that much blood. He walked out of the thing hospital